Welcome back, students. In this lecture, we'll try to understand about your unit number 3. So these are the basic concepts what we are going to discuss under your unit number 3. First, we'll try to understand what are the workflows, what do you mean by workflow of your process, and what are different checkpoints that are available in your process. Then we'll try to understand in which way you can plan your processes. So as a part of this lecture, we'll try to understand about your workflows. So starting with your workflow. So what do you mean by a workflow? Workflow is, it can be basically said as a sequential set of activities, or this particular workflow process can also be said as a sequential set of activities that are included throughout your project development. That can be taken as your workflow here or your process. So here whenever we talk about your process, so this this sequential workflows will help you out in understanding what is the current state of your project, and it will also help you out in easily understanding what are available in your project here. What are the plan about your project? What is the construction cost? What plans are conducted so far? So all this will fall under your process workflow processes. So this modern software what we are going to discuss here, it is going to so your modern process, it is going to overcome these 4 different phases what we have already discussed about your inception, elaboration, transition, and deployment phases. So it is going to focus on this process models now. So basically your management flow, it is going to be divided into 3 different categories or 3 different levels. First is your planning phase. This planning includes the complete requirements and plan for each and every phase. What are the activities that are supposed to be included in your each and every phase. Next you go with your project control. This discusses about the project releases, the project development, the project implementation, and the project test cases, whatever. So all these will be taken into consideration related to your project control. And last is your organization. Organization discusses about your management activities. So management activities include what are different management activities, how it is going to manage different set of people available in your available throughout your project, and how it is going to communicate with the different stakeholders. All those will be discussed under your organization. So these are the 3 different disciplines of your project workflow or project control. going with the different activities that are available in your project workflow. So basically a project workflow consists of 7 different activities or 7 different processes. First is your management process. So management, it is going to focus mostly on the releases of your project. What is the cost associated with your project? What is the deadline of your project? All these will be discussed about your management. It is majorly focusing on the communication related to your stakeholders and the different set of people working on that particular project. Next you go with your environment. Environment includes what are the improvements that can be enhanced, what are the improvements that can be taken into consideration, and in order to implement these improvements, what are the different activities that are supposed to be planned, which sort of tools that can be used will be taken by your environment here. When you go with your requirements, this majorly focus on the complete analysis of your requirements and the complete analysis of what are requirements gathered by your customer. Whether they are satisfying your customer requirements or not will be focused under your requirements activity. 4th is your design activity. So designing starts with architecture design of your software process. So architecture design basically indicates what are the design cases, what are the different classes, which models are supposed to be used when you go with designing your project. Is it in align with your requirements which are gathered in your previous state or not? All this will be focused by using your design workflow. And next to go with your implementation. Once your architecture is built, once your architecture is built from your previous phase, that is your design phase, this implementation will focus on developing your project. So development indicates coding your project. After coding your project, you try to integrate all your different models, and integration, after integrating your models, you just check, like the developers are supposed to check whether that is in line with your requirements and in line with the design which is already made, or any further modifications are required. So that is discussed about your implementation. And then you go with your assessment. Assessment is a way of testing whether your project developed so far is as per the requirements provided by your user or not, or any modifications suggested by the user or the different stakeholders whom we are discussing about. So assessment can be conducted on a frequent basis, or at frequent interval of time you can conduct your assessments. And when you go with your deployment, deployment deals with the end user activities here. End user, like you deploy your project at the end user and take the feedback from the end user, and is in a fashion that whether it is behaving as per the end user requirement or not. So deployment works with how your project is behaving with the users of the project. So next we will try to understand. Okay, so these are the different activity levels across the different life cycle models. So we have already discussed about these 4 phases: inception, elaboration, construction and transition phase. So here management is in focus with all the different phases that are available throughout your project development. When you go with your environment, environment deals with the improvements that are supposed to be made, as already discussed. So that comes with your elaboration phase here. So your environment is majorly focusing on the elaboration phase of your project, and part it can be focused on construction and transition phase. When you go with your requirements, requirements are supposed to be gathered at the very initial state of your project. So more focus related to your requirements will be taken at your inception phase, and further improvements can be taken at your elaboration phase. Similarly, when you go with your designing starts with your construction phase here, not before your construction. So mostly your elaboration phase and your construction phase will discuss about your designing part. When you go with your implementation, implementation is a way of constructing your program. So most of the activities are intended within this elaboration phase itself. Implementation is taken within your construction phase. And assessment is also a way of testing your project with different activities or different inputs and outputs. So this assessment is going to be focused on the last 2 parts majorly, that is your construction and transition, and deployment majorly focus on your transition phase itself. It is at the end user. So this is a life cycle across of all the phases related to your activities across the given software model. Right. So what are the key signatures a modern framework is going to have? So first is your architecture first approach. So whenever you are discussing about your modern software approach, we take in align with your waterfall model, that is your conventional model also. So first point is your architecture first approach. This is going to enhance or focus majorly on designing your program first, or designing your project first. After the design part is done only, you can go with your next phases or next stages of your project development. So before you start designing, this particular architecture first approach is going to focus on gathering all the requirements and analyzing all the requirements related to your project. So after gathering and analysis of your project are done, and if they are in align with your user requirements, that is your stakeholder requirements, then you go with designing your architecture. Any improvements related to your architecture can be made within architecture first approach. So after this architecture designing is done only, you can go with your construction phase. Otherwise, you can make further improvements in your architecture phase itself. Second, you go with your iterative life cycle process. So in this iterative life cycle process, every phase is going to be divided into at least 2 or more different iterations. Depending on the phase of your project, these iterations can be reduced to 1 also. So this iterative process majorly portrays on how many iterations each and every phase is going to make use, or how many iterations can be conducted on each and every phase. Next, you go with your round trip engineering. So this round trip engineering is going to focus on how we can increase the standards of your project. Increasing the standards of your project, like which environments will help you in improving the performance of your project, or providing more functionalities to your project, will be discussed by using your round trip engineering. When you go with your demonstration based approach, so this majorly deals with the implementation part of your project. So after your implementation is done, what are the assessments that are supposed to be conducted initially in order to demonstrate this particular project to the end user? This majorly focus on the understanding of the end user, or how you provide a demonstration to the end user, how your project is going to behave. So these are the 4 key signatures related to your modern process of your framework. Right. So this is all about your first workflow model. Next we'll continue with your iteration workflows.